Welcome to Boobs Aren't Worth Dying For, the podcast dedicated to integrative health and healing from breast cancer and breast cancer treatment using the best of conventional and natural medicine. Your host, Deborah Beaumont, is an advanced practice nurse, functional medicine practitioner, and fellow breast cancer survivor.
Hi, welcome to today's episode of Boobs Aren't Worth Dying For. I'm so glad you're joining me for this premiere episode. And I want to take some time today to talk about the podcast and introduce myself and let you know what the podcast is geared towards. My name is Deborah Beaumont. I am an advanced practice nurse. I'm a functional medicine practitioner, and I'm a breast cancer survivor. And really, this podcast comes out of my personal and professional experiences for the last 7 years since I was diagnosed with bilateral breast cancer. And I talk about it because I've gone down a learning path personally and professionally that is not where I thought I would wind up when I was first diagnosed. When I was first diagnosed, I just wanted to go through traditional treatment. I wanted to go through surgery. I wanted it over as soon as possible. And I wanted to get back to my life. And to me, it was very formulaic. And actually, when you are in the traditional medical world, they make it sound pretty formulaic. And boy, did I learn a lot in the journey because it was anything but a standard formula. I personally experienced complications that my doctors would actually say to me, I don't know how to treat this. You need to find something else. And I went through numerous surgeries, and I went through rejection of the expanders for the implants. And through that process, learned a lot about autoimmune reactions that can happen because you're getting foreign substances put in your body. None of that information was ever given to me by my doctors. It was actually what I needed to learn on my own. And as I've gone along, I can look back and with some relief, think about surgeries that were recommended to me as elective surgeries to deal with some symptom that I was dealing with, only to find out from what I know now as a functional medicine practitioner that A, it would have just been unnecessary surgery, B, it wouldn't have fixed the problem that they told me it was going to fix, and C, it would have created other problems. And that what I needed to know really was not going to come out of the realm of Western medicine, because that's not how they're trained and it's not how they approach this. They approach it from a very conventional and standard viewpoint, and they can be very dismissive of anything outside of that. And yet there is so much that we need to know about prevention, about treatment, about long-term management, about empowering ourselves in order to make decisions about long-term management. One of the things that I do all the time for myself and for my clients is I'm always looking into what is the side effect of the treatments that they're recommending, because doctors are not necessarily forthcoming about that. And yet, at the phase that I'm at now, which is really looking at long-term hormone suppression therapy, which is very typical if you're going through certain types of breast cancer, as much as they've told me about those, A, they haven't told me about the very serious health consequences and risk of these medications. And when I have learned about them and gone back and asked them about them, they may acknowledge them, but they also dismiss them at the same time. And so in terms of gathering information and making that decision for myself, I really needed to look at a lot of resources outside of just going to my doctor. And that is actually, if anything, one of the things that I am really invested in, which is empowering my clients to get as much information as they can. We live in a system where our first instinct is to go to our doctors, and doctors are treated like gods, and what they say to us is considered the gospel truth. Well, in truth, it's not. And as much as we need to listen to them, and as much as it's important that we have them as part of our team, they're only one part of our team. And that is one of the things that I'm very passionate about teaching people. And I think that that's actually one of the underlying premises of this podcast, is really teaching you about health and how it impacts us in terms of our risk of cancer, our risk of recurrence. And I'm really passionate about people making informed choices for themselves. The truth is, breast cancer affects all of us. I think sometimes some of the most powerful impact is in our relationships and in our intimate relationships. That isn't always talked about or acknowledged. I think that there's a lot of emotional and social consequences of this diagnosis, going through this, that we may know about or we may experience, but we feel like we're the only person in the world. There's one thing that I hope that the podcast does is give you support and give you a sense of community so that you don't feel like you're alone going through this. I had a friend of mine, a fellow breast cancer survivor. She said that breast cancer is just loss after loss after loss. Not to be depressing. The fact is that it is. It's a loss on many levels. It's certainly a loss at a physical level when we lose our perception of how we look. Our body goes through changes that we didn't choose. We have to deal with amputation, disfigurement, scars. But it also is a loss of emotional familiarity, and it's a loss of relationships sometimes, and it's a loss of sometimes, I think, trust in our bodies. And I really want to talk about all of those things because they're very real in terms of going through this, but there often isn't a place to talk about it or acknowledge it. I hope that this podcast is something that stimulates your curiosity, stimulates your ideas, or, makes you feel like, oh yeah, that's me, but no one ever put words to it. In the course of the podcast, I am going to have guests on here who can talk about different aspects of health. I am a functional medicine practitioner, so I do believe that nutrition, targeted supplements, stress management, and lifestyle is as important as surgery, chemotherapy, and prescriptions. And that puts me outside the mainstream, but I'm kind of comfortable in that place. What I do want to talk about is the amount of information that we get bombarded with. We get bombarded on Google. We get bombarded in the news and magazines, and friends send me links all the time about integrative medicine. And one of the biggest concerns I hear about integrative medicine is that it's anti-Western medicine, that it's an either-or choice. You can't go completely alternative, and there's a lot of risk and fears with that, which are valid. I'm not one of those people that is anti-medicine, but there are a lot of people in the alternative space that are. And I really want to call that out because alternative means a lot of things to a lot of different people. And as much as I am in that category because I believe we need more than Western medicine in addressing this, I will be the first person on the bandwagon when it comes to some of these out there treatments that you hear about. Things like frozen lemons being better than chemotherapy. It's like, really? Not only is that insulting and in some ways dangerous if someone reads that, but my first thought is always, do you deal with this? Because I don't deal with any of this out of choice. I deal with this because it's a life and death decision. And is that what you're willing to lay your life on the line for? Frozen lemons, really? Because I'm not, and I don't recommend that for my clients. What I do recommend is really understanding your body and understanding your unique needs and understanding that there's a lot you can do to take charge of your health, to take charge of your experience, to take charge of your recovery that don't involve just taking another prescription or living with the side effects of these treatments without ever feeling better or feeling like you're have the energy to live your life and live it well. And as a practitioner, that's what I really hope to bring to my clients and what I hope to bring to you in this podcast. We know a lot more about cancer than we ever did. About 20 years ago, a little less than 20 years ago, some researchers came out with some groundbreaking information. It was 10 hallmarks of cancer. And in that really turned our understanding of cancer upside down, really started looking at cancer as a metabolic process. A metabolic process is the end result of sometimes 10, 15, 20 years of damage we've been doing to ourselves or that we've been exposed to through toxins or lifestyle or any number of things. But these 10 hallmarks of cancer really revolutionized our understanding of cancer and what we could do. And it talked about things that are unique to cancer cells, things that cancer cells need to grow and to multiply and to metastasize and to evade detection by our natural healthy immune system. And the importance of that is that if we understand those things that cancer needs to grow, then there are a lot of things that we can do to get healthier so that we're not supplying those mechanisms of cancer growth. This was revolutionary because up to that point in time, the attitude was, well, it's genetic and there's nothing that you can do about it. Believe me, if there's anything that has changed in the last 20 years, it's our understanding of genetics, epigenetics, and what we can do every day in our lives to impact how our genes express themselves in our lives. And that's really radical. Unfortunately, not really part of oncology care. That's just not how they're trained or what they do. So what I'm hoping to do is kind of bring you the best of both worlds, to bring you the best of what we understand from cancer as a metabolic disease and something that has multi-system impact, and what we can do to improve our health and our chances of not having recurrence or diagnosis of this disease. And I want to acknowledge that sometimes we have to go through the medical treatments that we have to go through because it is a life and death decision. I have got some guests that are going to be coming on that I'm really excited for you to hear. They are people who function in the integrative health space. They've got great information. Much of it comes down to nutrition and lifestyle. And I know that brings up a lot of feelings in people, but I really believe that information is power. And I really want you to have that information. There's a lot of exciting information out there about things that we can do. I've got some guests coming on to talk about cancer specifically and things that we need to know in terms of routine cancer screening, things that we need to know in terms of prevention, and things that we need to know in terms of treatment. Not necessarily an either or thing, but just things that we need to know to make an informed choice. And sometimes things that we need to know to challenge our practitioners about. We need to be informed because there's a lot that isn't being covered and there's a lot that we're not being told. And we need to be informed because our best chances are when we advocate for ourselves. And so I really want to help you be an advocate for yourself in this whole process. I'm doing this podcast because I don't want women to go through this alone, and I want you to have options, education, and choices. To that end, if there is anything that you're struggling with, that you have questions about, that I can hopefully be helpful in answering or finding information for you, please feel free to reach out to me at radicalhealthrn@gmail.com or reach me through my website, which is mindbodynutritionrn.com. As I said, my desire to do this podcast, Boobs Aren't Worth Dying For, came from my cumulative experience as a patient, as a provider, and as someone who's just trying to make the best choices possible. I want to support you in that as well. So I hope you'll join me as we take this journey together. And one of the things that is really helpful is if you go to iTunes and subscribe for future episodes, and you can also leave positive reviews. So I hope you'll join me on this journey of Boobs Aren't Worth Dying For, and I hope you'll send me your comments, feedback, and questions. So until next time, take care.
Thanks for listening. If you have questions or feedback, you can reach Deborah at radicalhealthrn@gmail.com or her website, www.mindbodynutritionrn.com. You can also find us on Facebook under Boobs Aren't Worth Dying For. For future episodes, subscribe on iTunes, where you can also leave positive reviews. Until next time.